Funding for the production of Folks is provided in part by the Friends of LPB.
I am completely afraid of things I was never afraid of. I'm very conscious of who I let into my home. If it's just somebody delivering a UPS man, I'm scared to death if there's a man.
The rape victim, we'll call her Tony, describing her fears today more than a year and a half after being raped. Hello everyone, I'm Rob Hinton.
And I'm Genevieve Stewart. Today on Folks, we'll be taking a close look at rape, a fear that smolders in the minds of many women. We'll also take a look at another form of woman abuse with Ayn Stehr of the Battered Women's Program in Baton Rouge.
In addition, we'll show you how some women and men are learning to defend themselves. That and more today on Folks.
Everybody says folks, just plain old folks. Everybody's just people all over the world. Those who live, folks got to give, folks got to care, folks got to share. Our world is small, so very small. What touches one of us, who touches us all? To stay alive, just to survive, folks got to be in harmony. Everybody just folks, just plain old folks, just plain old folks. Everybody's just folks, everybody just folks, just plain old folks, just plain old folks. Everybody's just folks.
Today on Folks, we're visiting Andrew Jackson College in Baton Rouge. It's not your typical college. You see, students here are taught Korean martial arts. Now, later on in the program, we'll be talking to the director of the college. But first, a look at a violent crime that few women and men even want to think about, and that's rape. But the more you know about it, the better your chances are of avoiding it. Now, those of you with small children just might want to pull them away from the television set, because what you're about to see are some graphic reenactment of actual rape incidents. Again, rape is not the type of subject you like to spend a lot of time talking about, but the more you know about it, the better your chances are of avoiding potential rape situations. It was just before noon on Thursday, December 9th, in a quiet residential neighborhood that a black male in his mid-20s approached a residence under the guise of collecting clothes for the needy.
Collecting clothes for a needy cause?
I don't have any.
Okay, well, take this. Do what I tell you. I'm gonna kill you.
With a knife, the attacker threatened to kill the victim. He forced her into an upstairs bedroom and raped her. The attack was interrupted when a friend of the victim arrived. Wednesday, June 30th, 1982, at 6:30 a.m., a 46-year-old woman was jogging through a park. As she slowed down to a walk, a man from out of nowhere approached her and dragged her into the bushes. The woman was beaten and threatened with a piece of glass. Then the attacker raped her. These are just two examples of actual rape cases.
If you're born a female, your chances are probably about, according to the last statistics I read, about 1 out of 4 women in your lifetime, will have been a rape victim or will be a rape victim that you've met. So your chances are very high. As a female, doesn't matter what race you are, how old you are, what you look like, anything at all. Basically, a female is chosen because she is biologically a female as an object, not for any other reason. Sometimes because of convenience, she'll be picked. She might be putting herself in a vulnerable situation. For instance, hitchhiking or opening her door to anybody, which we all know are dangerous things to do. But many rapes happen when a person is sound asleep in their house and the, assailant gets in somehow, whether breaking in through the door or a window's unlocked and they come in.
Here are some more facts about rape. Rape occurs most often on Saturday, followed in order by Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. 49% of rapes occur between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., 38% between 3 p.m. and 11 p.m. Most victims are 16 to 19 years of age, followed by 20 to 24, 12 to 15, 25 to 34, 35 to 49, and then 50 and over. 40% of all rapists are friends, acquaintances, or family members. To protect this woman's identity, we'll call her Tony. She is a rape victim.
I was in New Orleans for Mardi Gras about 1.5 years ago, and my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, and I got separated on Bourbon Street. And we had said that if we got separated, we would meet at Jackson Square. Well, I, first of all, stayed around where I last saw him for a while, looking for him there, and then remembered that we had said this much earlier in the evening, and started going over there. Well, by this time it had gotten pretty quiet. They had a curfew that year, and the police came and told everybody to leave. And I was going towards Jackson Square, and not really being from here and knowing the area that well, I kind of got lost. And a man drove up and offered me a ride, and I said no, I didn't want a ride. And he said, well, you're going to get one anyway. And he dragged me into the car. And there wasn't, I was really shocked. He had a razor blade and said he was going to slit my throat and all. And I don't really recall whether I screamed at the time. There weren't very many people around. It was one of the narrow streets in the French Quarter. And even if I did scream, I don't know if anything would have happened, being Mardi Gras and all. And he took me over to the warehouse district, and I kept thinking I could jump out of the car, but we were going so quickly, and I thought, well, we'll have to stop at an intersection, and I didn't realize the warehouse district was over there, and was sure that after we crossed the major roads that it would be easy for me to get away, but then we ended up in this area that I was pretty scared to escape, but I tried several times, but was afraid that if I did try to escape, he would outrun me.
How was it that the police were able to catch this guy?
Well, I escaped from him about an hour later, and he drove across the river and picked up another girl and did the same thing to her, yet she escaped after being captured for about 10 hours by him. And they caught him about 2 hours later. His car was stuck in some mud and some woods, and he was put in jail for her rape, but they really didn't associate both of ours until about a little over a year later. And he was out on bail and everything by then, and it's a long story. He was arrested again, and he was involved in a incident where, when he was in the back of the car, the police were called on an armed robbery, and they ended up shooting the suspect, and he was seen on TV by somebody in the sex crimes units in New Orleans who had just read my file that day when they were cleaning out the files, and associated him with mine, looked up his record and saw he had been arrested the following day after my rape, and associated the two, and everything was exactly the same. The alias name he'd given us, the description that I had fit him perfectly, and down to missing fingers on one of his hands and things like that.
What effect has this ordeal had on your life?
It's completely changed my life. I became active with the Rape Crisis Center here in Baton Rouge. I became a counselor, hoping that helping other victims, I could get out the feelings, help them through it more than I had. I had a lot of feelings that I couldn't let out, except for having a supportive husband through it. I am completely afraid of things I was never afraid of. I'm very conscious of who I let into my home. If it's just somebody delivering a UPS man, I'm scared to death if there's a man. I was thinking the other day as I was walking my dog how much I used to like the freedom of just going out in the countryside, and I'm scared to death now that somebody's going to come up and I'll be out in the middle of nowhere and they'll attack me. I just don't have the confidence I used to have in myself.
Do you feel this incident will follow you the rest of your life?
I'm positive they will, because I never realized how easily you can be a victim until I was one.
Whereas Tony reported her rape, it's estimated that many rape victims don't.
We still think of the movies we've seen where a woman's reputation is torn apart in court and so forth. So it's just strictly by ignorance a lot of times that people don't report them, because they don't know changes. They don't know that there's a rape crisis center that will help them, that they'll get free services in Baton Rouge if they report at a hospital, a free examination with a counselor there with her. They still feel that if they report it, nobody will believe them. The police will question them and put them down, and you know, and like I said, it's strictly due to ignorance, because rape really isn't the kind of subject that you do a lot of reading or investigation about until it happens to someone in your family or someone you know, which is sad.
How does rape change a woman's life?
Women today, a lot of women that I see are more educated in the sense that they're more aware of what's going on around them. We're not quite as protected as we used to be a generation or 2 generations ago. So in other words, a young girl grows up basically knowing what's going on outside her door when she goes off to college now. She's much more alert and ready for different things that may happen to her. And so therefore, if something does happen, whether it be a rape or a fire or a death in the family, I think that young people today are a little bit more stronger and prepared. And it strictly depends on her and her family. If she has a close family, they're going to be much more supportive, of course. If a woman's raped and she has no family at all, then she has nobody to help her, to lean on, to support her. It could take her longer to recover.
And what about men? What should they know about rape?
The issue of rape itself, if it should happen to their mother, their wife, their daughter, what have you, it would certainly be much better if that particular man is a little knowledgeable about rape, so he'll know how to support that particular family member or friend and do what's right by her or what will be in her best benefit, rather than getting upset and maybe blaming her or not understanding in particular what the crime of rape is about.
And why do some men rape women?
Some people feel like that rapists have been victims of child sexual abuse themselves, about 80% of them. Some feel that rapists come from a family with a very domineering mother or female figure in their life. Questions of their sexuality, problems with that. There is no reason behind it. There's so many different theories, but there's not one particular reason. And rape is the type of crime that there's an exception for everything. For instance, you know, there might be 10 rapes that happen, and the person that's arrested in it might come from a similar background, similar type of education, so on, but then the next one that is arrested might be very different from that particular type of profile, and which kind of messes up the whole breakdown that you're trying to do, psychological breakdown.
What about the myth that the way some women dress incites rape?
I think there's still some of those old attitudes, I mean, not only about rape, but other issues also. And it's sad that people think that, because Crime Stoppers is a perfect example. If you've seen some of the, what would you call it, the replays or, dramatizations of the actual events, and you see an 80-year-old woman, sound asleep in her bed, and somebody breaks in, that right there automatically, I think, would, knock out the theory it's what somebody wears. And I'm sure there's situations where maybe a person dresses up somehow that is enticing to somebody, but I don't think that that would cause a man to rape her. It might cause him to take notice and whistle maybe, but I don't think that that's cause for a violent crime.
Throughout the state, there are many agencies like the Stop Rape Crisis Center in Baton Rouge that provide counseling services to all women who are victims of rape.
The counselor tries to stay in contact with her for at least a 6-week period, like I said, filling those basic needs, and then referring her to professionals if she needs professionals, whether it be medical or legal or what have you. The counselor attends the hearings and trials with her, so that every time she comes down here, she has somebody she recognizes and who knows what happened to her, and that she can ask questions to, and she won't get lost more or less in the red tape of government, if you will. That's basically what services are offered as far as the counseling goes. We have, as I said, the 24-hour rape crisis line, which is basically information. Anybody can come into my office or make an appointment for counseling, and it is basically crisis counseling also, which will be referred to a professional if it is needed at the time. But sometimes people just need someone to talk to just to get it off their chest. We have a group counseling session every week on Wednesday night from 5 to 7 that's open to anybody who's been a victim of sexual assault, whether it happened a day ago or 20 years ago. And these women talk among themselves about how they dealt with it and the problems they had or are having. And it's strictly, like I said, for sexual assault victims, and anybody can attend that.
Remember, rape can happen to any woman or child. It has no respect for age, social position, or economic status. If you are constantly aware of this, you will be more cautious in what you do or say.
We would now like to tell you about a serious problem that affects more than 4 million women a year, and that is the problem of woman abuse. Violence against women is degrading and dehumanizing. To help us understand why women are beaten by the men they are involved with, we have Ayn Stehr, Executive Director of the Battered Women's Program in Baton Rouge. Ann, welcome to Folks.
Thank you.
Family violence is a serious problem. Let's discuss the scope of the problem for just a moment. It's reported that every 12 seconds a woman is beaten by her partner, that woman abuse affects 3 times the number of women than rape does. And within a 6-year period, 17,000 people lost their lives as a result of family violence. Why? What causes family violence?
Well, there are a lot of reasons that contribute to us having this problem in our society. It goes as far back as colonization. We developed some laws based on the English common law. And as you're well aware, over the years, women have been thought of not as individuals who have the same rights and responsibilities as men do in our society, but rather as possessions or part of the property of a male. They're born into a family and are therefore the property of their fathers, and then when they marry, they become the property of their husbands. This, unfortunately, even though times have changed drastically, this message is given over generation after generation, and so women still do not have the same status as men. That's only one of the reasons. There are other reasons, like a child who grows up in a violent home who sees their parents abusing one another, or if they themselves are abused, will grow up to then abuse their spouse or their partner. There are a lot of things that intervene. Of course, our hard economic times. It's not the reason for family violence, but it certainly contributes to the incidents. That question is one that can't be answered with a simple statement or a listing of 1, 2, 3 reasons why it is. It simply is here, and we need to address it.
Our society tends to blame the victims. You hear the old myth of, she must be enjoying it if she's staying. What are the real reasons why women would remain in a violent home environment?
Once again, there are hundreds of reasons why any particular woman would stay. What we found from Dr. Mildred Pagelow, who is a well-known sociologist who has studied this problem for the past 15 years, is that most of the reasons fall into 3 major categories. The first one is the woman's resources, both her internal resources and her external resources. By internal, we mean, how does she feel about herself? Does she believe that she can make it on her own? Does she think that she can get a job and support herself and her children? External resources, does she have money accessible to her? Even though there are a lot of middle class and upper middle class women who are battered women, often they are not able to put their hands on enough cash just to get out and have a hotel room for one night. Does she have a car to go anywhere if she's being beaten? Does she have 3 small children whom she couldn't get child care for even if she did leave and find a job? So that's one main category, her resources. What does she have or doesn't, or what does she not have to keep her there? The second major category is her traditional ideology. And by that we mean, what does she see as her role in her life? Does she see her role as being primarily a mother and a caretaker and a wife? Or does she see herself also as a person, a breadwinner, whatever? And rolled into this traditional ideology are her religious beliefs. Was she brought up to believe that divorce is a sin, or that if there is any problem in that family, that she's responsible for it, and she's also responsible for solving it? So that's another area where reasons fall under what she believes. The third area is the institutional response. Say we have a battered woman who has called her mother and told her mother that she's being abused. Has she heard from her mother, well, I'm sorry, darling, but you married him, now you've got to make the best of it? Has she called a friend, and have they not believed her because he's such a nice guy when he's not being violent? She's the only one who has witnessed his violent episodes, so have they not believed her and then not helped her? Has she called the police, and have they responded but then asked her what she did to cause it? Or have they not responded thinking that, well, if we give them a while, they'll settle it themselves? So there are just a lot of reasons. In addition to those 3 main categories are that she might love him. And most of the women we work with don't really want the relationship to end. They just want the violence to end.
This idea of blaming the victim is very common. Evidently, many women are blamed to the extent that their behavior caused or precipitated the violence that is done on them. Doesn't this leave scars on the women who are abused? Don't they often feel possibly that they are to blame in some way?
Certainly, and that's another reason why they may possibly stay, because they may feel responsible for the violence. I think we're all capable of antagonizing another person, but I think that all of us as individuals are responsible for our behavior. The women that we work with often do feel responsible, and that enters into some hesitation on their part to reach out for help or even to tell someone about what is going on. And certainly when a violent episode happens, they feel responsible for it, so they try and change something in their life or something about them, and they try and they try and they try, and as they try and things don't work, they begin to feel more guilty. You know, what is it with me that I can't make this work, that I keep making him hit me? And of course, at the same time, after he's hit her, he's probably told her, well, if you hadn't done so-and-so, or if you haven't said so-and-so, I wouldn't have hit you. So she doesn't do that anymore, doesn't say that anymore, so that reinforces him that he's right, and he's telling her, yes, you're responsible, and she's accepting that and trying to change. So it just continues to snowball.
So it seems like the bottom line then is counseling, because if both the victims and the abuser don't receive counseling, this behavior will continue. Now, the Battered Women's Program provides a total spectrum of counseling: legal, medical, children's counseling, economic assistance, employment assistance. How can an interested viewer in need of help avail themselves of these services within the state?
They can begin by calling our 24-hour crisis line at 389-3001. It's answered 24 hours a day by trained counselors. If a person calls from another area of the state, then we will give them the number to contact in the appropriate catchment area for where they're residing. What they also may want to do is consider the fact that in order for there to be any change in that couple unit or that family unit, some sort of intervention is going to have to be made, whether it's the woman getting to safety for a period of time or whether it's the intervention by therapist, whatever, but some intervention has to be made in order for there to be a change, because if no intervention is made, there's no reason for change.
If these women aren't sure where or who to contact in their respective cities, would I be safe in saying if they contacted a clergyman or a social service agency, that they in turn could put them in contact with the local Battered Women's Program in their city?
It's quite possible if those agencies in that particular part of the state are up on all the resources that are available in the community.
62% of the children who have either been abused or witnessed child abuse then become abusers when they become adults. So that seems to say that if you just call the police every time you're abused, that's just a temporary measure because you're not stopping the cycle of abuse. Is that accurate? Can you shed more light on that problem?
That is accurate. I wouldn't want to tell a woman who's been abused, though, not to contact the police, because we believe that it's always helpful to have a report made on the violent incident. But certainly something in addition to that has to be done. She needs to talk with someone to find out a little more about why this happens, you know, why it's happening in her relationship, and whether he's open or not, because lots of times the abuser is not open to counseling while she's still in the home, because if she's still in the home, there's no reason for him to make any changes. So whether he's willing or not, she needs to be in touch with someone who can give her some information and some support and let her know that she's not causing it and it's not her responsibility. Ending the violence may end up being her responsibility because he may not be willing to make any changes, and then the responsibility then would fall on her to make herself safe, either by leaving, divorce, whatever.
Well, in summary, it seems as though women should receive some type of counseling and help, otherwise their children in turn may end up being family violence abusers in the long run, and certainly they should go ahead and receive help in their respective cities as soon as possible.
Certainly.
Ayn Stehr, I'd like to thank you very much for being with us today on Folks. I think it's been very informative for our audience, and thank you again.
You're welcome.
As promised, a look at Andrew Jackson College. It is here that a lot of people are learning how to defend themselves under the direction of Master He-Young Kimm. Master Kimm is a highly regarded Hapkido instructor in Baton Rouge. He is also well known for his self-defense demonstration. Here he shows techniques against two men in knife attacks.
Shoulder.
At his college in Baton Rouge, Master Kimm teaches martial arts to students ages 5 and up. 15 to 20% of his students are women.
Martial art is so broad. So certain type of martial art is good for the children to discipline and to help their coordination. Also, certain type of martial art good for the aged, middle-aged people because it helps their blood circulation and keep a good shape. For children and adults, children and the young groups, let's say age 5 to 16, their parents send them to develop self-discipline and coordination and self-defense. Older peoples, they are coming here for a physical fitness purpose. Many of my students told me they had a weightlifting by themselves or joined some of health club. But they cannot push by themselves. But when you come in here, you have your partner. So when your partner kick, you have to block. If you don't block, you see the stars, see?
Master Kimm began studying martial arts when he was a child in Korea, but he was much older when he developed a serious interest.
When my fathers and some of our local friends got in fight, and he was seriously ill, hurted, and was in hospital a long time. So according to Korean tradition, the protecting family name is very, very important. So I thought, practice martial art hard and a revenge some days. So that way I can restore the honor of my family.
But as a result of his studies, Master Kimm no longer seeks revenge, now that he finds peace of mind in his martial arts. Master Kimm makes self-defense look real easy. He says one of the first things he teaches his students is how to fall.
When he kick, you punch. When he kick, you block. When he throw, you have to fall. So since your opponent's pushing, you have to practice hard, which produce good physical fitness.
That's our program for this week. Thanks for watching.
Next week on Folks, we'll take a look at some Black-owned and operated radio stations. We'll also have a feature on a very unique radio station for the blind.
Until next time, so long.
Funding for the production of Folks is provided in part by the Friends of LPB.